Hey. This is all working here. Okay. We are live and rocking here. Perfect. Eva Diamond. I want to invite you.
Look how fast.
I know, that's pretty amazing.
Wait, so can you see where I am?
No.
It's too dark.
Oh, are you on your deck?
I'm on my rooftop deck, yes. And it's 8 o'clock at night here, and I just had the most magnificent sunset. Hold on, I'll share a little bit with you.
Cool.
Can you see it?
Very nice.
Yeah. So the ocean's right behind me, and if it gets too noisy, then you'll tell me and I'll go inside. But I'm trying to spend the entire day outside today.
Yeah, I think you posted something earlier on. You said, you're little toasted.
Yeah, you see?
Yeah.
I'm really, really cold, actually, because my skin is really hot from the sun. Yeah. Yeah, talking about the aging process, this is not helping. I know.
Well, it's a toss-up between, vitamin D, and, collagen breakdown. You'll figure it out.
Yeah, I'm not too worried at this point. Yeah, at least I didn't put baby oil on like I did when I was 22.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And I wonder, I'm always curious about when we make blanket statements like, this whole tanning thing, right? Tanning beds are, these big cancer-causing agents. And I'm going, well, I think when I see things like that, not that I'm want people to be foolhardy, but I'm going, I just think, so many of us, we're just so nutrient depleted that anything gets us. It's not just tanning beds. I mean,
yeah.
Otherwise, the skin cancer would be rampant, in most countries where there's a lot of sun, right? 24/7. So,
right.
So it just, this whole thing about nutrition, I was saying something to an individual the other day. He said, we just don't get how much we're struggling. We see it, but we just think, well, that's just the way things are, rather than, no, that, we've corrupted, this whole environment, this whole ecosystem, the last 50, 60 years so rapidly that, that the offshoots of it, of course, there is no evolution in humans. We're not going to evolve into this new way of living. It's just not going to happen. If it took thousands of years for our genetic code to figure it out in a completely organic environment, right? It's not going to happen in a completely artificial environment ever. So you have to be really awake, and that's why I like getting into conversations around things like this, because again, if we're not self-aware, we're just not going to have any fun.
That's right. And I think that what's really important is today. What we have is today, and so gathering information and sharing information with people that is more factual than kind of hypotheses or storytelling is why you and I we'd like to talk together and talk with an audience, because we want people to hear, about what our passion has led us to learn about.
Right.
So what do you want to talk about today?
Well, do you remember Bruce Lipton, Dr. Bruce Lipton? He actually wrote the book, Psychology Becomes Biology. And it's he actually went through a lot of challenges when he was doing his research, because he was a teaching professor, and but he started seeing things that he just couldn't quite understand. It was kind of contravening his mechanistic view of how the body functions, right? Because there's always been a real quite a standoff between the mechanics of psychology, the mechanics of biology, and I think it's some old ideas around how this whole process works, that one doesn't interfere with the other. We treat one individually, we treat, somebody's cognitive issues completely separately, but we don't often look at the association between, a thought process that is being expressed as in an emotional context, which is a neuropeptide, which is a series of chemicals. And when these chemicals flood through the body in repetition over time, the way the organs respond, the cells respond to this chemical flood based on how we think, the cells start actually, when they divide and replenish it and become new, they actually develop with an affinity towards misery. They develop with an affinity towards all these emotions, because emotions are chemical messengers. So we become addicted. We can become addicted to our emotions of fear, anger, depression. It's actually kind of fascinating.
Yeah, you said so much in about 8 sentences, probably maybe 12, and you are so brilliant, and you read voraciously, and you're constantly a student of life. So for you, those 3 paragraphs that you just said come out fluidly, and for the listener, I think we have to break it down. I think we have to break it down to some really important parts of what you said had to do with, at least from my listening, had to do
Absolutely.
with how we condition our brains. Well, actually, how our brains condition us. How we allow our brains to condition us instead of learning how to master our minds, which then allows us to master our emotions. And the different ways that we can do that, both nutritionally and with awareness and with conscious effort, to change those. What happens is that you're talking about with addiction in the next paragraph that you talked about, was that we actually create automatic connections in our brain between an emotional trigger or a thought and an emotional trigger. We make these automatic leaps, and we act as if we can't use like the keyboard for our own brain to change that pattern. We just let it go on autopilot. And it's as if, how many people would actually just push a button on their keyboard and say, okay, you type whatever you want and I'll respond. Right? Who would do that? How effective would we be if we sent off emails that were up to our keyboard to create?
Right. Well, it's I posted something earlier on today. It was actually a quote by Harty Eckert, and there was just 4 lines. It said, "It's we talk about the glass being half full or half empty." He said, "You're still the glass. You're the software. You're not the software. You're the hardware." And it just feels, and he was just kind of pointing towards the fact that it's there's things are happening if we just learn to identify what's actually going on. And it's a bit, despite all the verbiage around psychology and positive thinking, I think we get lost in language when I'm kind of I like being mechanistic. I like to understand, how does this thing work? Because if I understood how it works, then it's not personal. And it's not about all these array of experiences, good, bad, or ugly, that I've trod through. But what I need to figure out, otherwise I'm just going to be in the storybook of my life forever. And that's just really a very dismal thought. But if I can understand that, as you just said, if I have a thought process that's connected to an emotional trigger, and if I have some understanding of how those pieces work a little bit, then it's not personal. It's just how my brain works.
Right. I hear this all the time, David. I hear from people, because it's what I do for work, is I help people to change their associations with experience and emotion, to change the language that they use, even though, you're saying positive psychology. I'm not talking about positive psychology. I'm talking about, I think, exactly what you're talking about, which is, we have this automatic response to a thought that triggers an emotion, and we turn it into this bigger deal most of the time. And when I say to be mindful of language, to change your thoughts, to change your emotions, it's more about neutralizing, not about creating all this, everything's so great combination of words. It's one thing that I always find, I supervise a lot of therapists over the years, and one of my pet peeves is when they're working with somebody who's depressed and they say, well, you just have to try to think happy thoughts. I'm like, are you out of your freaking mind? That's why they're sitting in front of you. You know? Just think happy thoughts and you won't be depressed anymore. Oh, I didn't think of that. Right. So no, so basically
all my problems are solved.
Right. So one of the things that I encourage is for people to neutralize with fact. So one of the things, you know, and that's a strategy, that's a mechanism that, at least that's what I consider. So, you know, you have this emotional, this trigger, this thought, and it turns into this emotional response, which turns into yet another thought, which is usually related to, as you know, a historic event that we're matching it up to, as you like to say, with how the brain works. And if we can take charge of that process by intervening with neutralizing with fact, something you truly believe in wholeheartedly about your day, about yourself, about the situation, even if it's simply, I've been through this before and I'll get through it again because that's what I've done, that's what I do. That's neutralizing with fact. You take down the emotional charge and you become able to master your mind and master your body or your actions that follow.
Yeah, well, and again, I think it is, you know, really looking at, you know, being, like you said, being able to, if we can identify the patterns and we recognize that's what's occurring, we're less caught up in the substance of what's going on inside that conversation. You know, because I think that's the part where people get lost. You know, they get lost in the conversation and they don't realize that, you know, that there's that's actually, you know, it's kind of like it's an echo. It's just an echo from a part of your history, and yet it's so fascinating why why do we identify with it so easily? Like it just with all this stuff. I mean, we've been on the planet for, you know, for a couple thousand years, but in mass we identify with this stuff so rapid, like it just without even a thought, we just simply embrace the misery, like, you know, like it was a best friend. It's just really very interesting.
Well, people become comfortable. Just it's what you said before, where we become, you know, that pattern becomes addictive, only because it's what we know, so it's comfortable. It's what we know to be anxious. It's what we know, you know, to worry. It's what we know to feel rejected or to feel like somebody's going to screw you. And, you know, transferring this over to, you know, an area that you and I also like to talk about, which is, you know, our physical condition. And, you know, so often these thoughts that we have from history, like you're talking about, with emotional attachment to it, when we look in the mirror and we look at our bodies, we attach all of those historic emotions and beliefs about our bodies, no matter where we're at with our physical conditioning. And I don't know how much you deal with that with your clients. I know how much I deal with it with my clients who come to me for different reasons than they come to you.
Well, I mean, it's the whole reason why I got into neuropsychology and was kind of curious about it and how this process worked, because I was really kind of losing my nut there for, probably 5 years into the industry. And I'm going, man, it's just, you know, the success rate isn't really high. I mean, you can get somebody to a certain place, you just can't seem to keep them there. And that was the issue, right? It's just that once the novelty wore off and the personal training sessions ran out and their interest waned, like, you know, you could always move people forward, but it was just, you know, it was a slingshot program, right? They draw them forward, they snap back to where they started from. And within the training industry, of course, trainers not being really educated on really why people are there. You know, people aren't there to lose weight. You know, people are looking for salvation, right? It's not weight loss. It's just a general conversation, open the door. There's so much other stuff going on behind the girth that they walked in with. That, of course, the average trainer going through the typical training programs, they just have no idea.
Right.
And so they try the positive think psychology, right? Well, you know, it just, like you said, you just got to think happy thoughts, right? Or get angry and work your anger out. But it's that fascination on, you know, it's like, you know, what's going on inside people's heads. And when I started doing more physical rehabilitation, I realized we got into the conversation of actually having to redesign neural maps, redesign parts of the brain that had information about how that leg was supposed to move before the injury. We actually had to go build that map and go, wow, what an interesting correlation between how we respond to physical injury and the same way we respond to emotional injury.
Yes.
And there's a kind of similar fashion on how this stuff is housed, and the treatment of it is actually kind of similar.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is, I think, more of what we're learning about in this day and age, the connection, that mind-body therapy is the newer version of mind-body. It's not just about meditation and mindfulness. That's the 1980s, 90s, 2000, right? But the new mind-body is about understanding this mechanism here and how it translates into and communicates with our bodies, right? And it either keeps us stuck or it allows us to evolve into the place that we want to go. It gives us the freedom and the space to move forward in life, right? And you and I are referencing the same thing from different angles. You're talking about people who, you know, want to get physically fit and start the process, and then there's a reason why there's a roadblock, and they back up and back up into the old body, right? And on my end, it's about thoughts and behavior patterns that, you know, they have a level of motivation. They start to move forward with their thoughts about themselves, the power of possibility, and the movement, you know, the action toward working with a trainer or creating. And then something happens in their world where somebody breaks up with somebody, or somebody loses a job, or somebody has an opportunity that means they have to take a healthy risk, and that's scary, you know, etc. And it changes the mental game. They see themselves differently. They see their opportunities differently, and then it changes the behavioral plan, and they're not going to the gym anymore.
You know, something that I found really interesting is that, and I think I mentioned before, when I was in Central America last year, the last couple of weeks we were there. We're in this place, city called Leon, and a beautiful colonial city, and they have these great big cathedrals, right? And just incredible architecture, beautiful artwork. But I'd go in there and I'd sit there for about 45 minutes to an hour, and I'd watch people come in and pray. And I was in this one alcove, and there was a statue of Jesus Christ and angels and a gilded gold counter, which I assume was real because it was all behind steel bars. But I watched people come and pray, and I did that in a few different cathedrals that were there. And what I was taking from it, I left with a sense of going, what an incredible gift these people have. Because they had this gift of the ability to, they have a singular place to go for consultation, for conversation, to work things out, to process this whole thing, and whether they're talking to a counselor, they're talking to a deity that they believe exists for them, and I'm going how much further ahead would people get, especially North American culture, because we're just so wild. We're so unhinged, it seems, across both nations here. But for people to actually have a practice, and these people have a faith, which is a practice of being mindful, practice of actually processing through the stuff, rather than they're not trying to be happy. They're struggling, they're asking for help, and they do it in real time. But I left with this real sense of, just what an incredible gift that they had, and the ability to find a resource like that. But in positive think culture, people are they just want to buy another book, and they're halfway through the book, and they're excited by the title,
or
then
they want to pop a pill. Right? So what you're talking about is when people go outside of themselves to some type of higher order, some type of higher power. And it doesn't always have to be God. It doesn't, and I work with people on their spirituality. It's not even, spirituality to me is shared energy. It's shared energy between you and something outside of yourself, or someone outside of yourself. And that shared energy is the kind that fills you up, the kind that You can feel in your soul. If we believe in souls, it's in your soul, it's in your heart, and it elevates your experience, right? And a lot of us, particularly in the United States of America, are afraid of giving over that control to the unknown and the power of that energy. One of the things that also, I work a tool that I give people in a new way to master their minds, change their brain chemistry, and to elevate their experience is exercising gratitude.
Right.
Because, how many people do you know say, oh yeah, I know how to be grateful. I write a list every day of the things I'm grateful for. Right? That's lovely. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But the truth be told, it's a remote control exercise, and often for people. And it, again, to me, the spiritual component of gratitude comes when it connects you to something outside of yourself. So writing a list on a piece of paper still is self-contained in my world. So when what I teach people to do is to exercise gratitude, meaning in a moment, and I'm accused of being exceptionally corny by everybody who knows me, but in a moment, I say out loud, holy shit, this is magnificent. Look at this beautiful, like, I don't care. I'm going to be the greeting card for every experience that I feel deserves a greeting card in my life. Like, this is the best day ever. No, it's like, but really, it's genuine. And it's become so habitual that I can't I can't help it. It comes out my mouth. But also it's the shared with someone else, right? It's the shared expressive gratitude with somebody else in a moment. And when we do that, we shift the chemistry in our brains. And we're not talking about those chemicals specifically today. You and I could do that if we want to. But it's a condition that reduces cortisol, increases the serotonin levels and the dopamine levels, and creates a sense of calm. Right?
Well, yeah. And I think, it's just, and the reason why I like the mechanics of, understanding it, because I think sometimes that because we've been in, let's say, in a state for so long, we've done everything, right? Which isn't the case, but that's the conversation. That for something to be so simple, it couldn't possibly be that easy. Just to say, again, every time I look at the ocean, it just anything that's going on is gone. Right. It just pulls it out of me. And
that's why I'm still sitting outside, David. That's why
I know.
I'm still here.
Yeah. So it's a very visceral thing. And I just, and I keep pointing it to my kids every time you come down the hill, and we have this beautiful 180-degree view of the oceans and islands and mountains with snow peaks. And I pointed out to them to the point where now when we drive down, my son will start mentioning it. He goes, "Wow, that's it's pretty amazing. Look at the colors out there. They're all blues." And but it's but I think we think it has to be really hard, because it's how could something so simple as just being present, which has been a conversation for centuries, being present. How could it be that easy? And I think we're still wired for complexity. We still want to make it really complicated, which would validate why we haven't got there yet.
Yeah. So I want to transfer over to fitness and nutrition in a minute, but I got to tell you, one of the homework assignments that I gave to a group of people that I work with in Manhattan, who are new in recovery from addiction, the homework assignment, and I've used this before when I used to run this kind of group with police officers and firefighters who were experiencing PTSD from their work. I did narrative therapy group, which is what this is. And I gave them the same homework assignment. It was amazing. The homework assignment I'm giving to our viewers now is, just for this week, Monday through Friday, I want you to notice love. I want you to notice love. So it could be, I've had people say, well, they saw this grandmother holding the hand of the granddaughter in the grocery line, or they saw this little girl petting their puppy, things like, just notice love. And you start to drive your attention to look for love. It's kind of like when you want to get pregnant and you think everybody in the world's pregnant, like all of a sudden you notice all these, no, you don't understand that, David, do you? Ladies, you understand what I'm talking about. Those of you who have wanted to have children or do have children, when you want to get pregnant, the whole world looks pregnant because it's only you who's not yet. And, you know, then you realize, wait a minute. Oh, no.
Well, my reference would be if you decide to buy a particular type of car that you haven't seen yet, as soon as you buy it, you drive on the road and there's like 50 of them. Yeah.
Everybody else has one. Anyway, so notice love.
Right.
Notice love, and your brain chemistry will shift when you pay attention to that. Right. And you know what? That's also true. I want to shift over to fitness because that's, you know, your area of expertise. We're both competitive athletes, but you actually work with the body in so many amazing ways with your clients. And the same thing is true with fitness. So many people go into the idea of becoming healthier and more fit with this baggage attached to, this is going to suck. You know, this is going to suck. Yeah. Or, you know, oh my God, you know, I'm never going to be able to do this. Or this is going to take forever for me to, you know, or whatever the case may be. They go into it with the mindset as opposed that derails them before they even start. And so, you know, one of the things that I wish for people to be able to do is to go into fitness as just like, for today, you know, I'm going to move my body with new vigor, with new strength for today. And if tomorrow comes and I do the same thing, great. But let me just do that for today. Instead of attaching all of this burden to, I'm going to be on a diet for 8 weeks until I get into a bikini, you know.
It's you know, it becomes a very daunting process, and it's, you know, I think there's that potential risk of being in purgatory where there's no expectations of success, but we're not quite at the I give up and I'm just going to simply resign myself to where I'm at. So, you know, so you start because you don't know what else to do. I don't want to quit, but I know I'm not going to win. So I'm just going to keep paying for this stuff and paying for it. You know, I've had clients where they come in and because they can afford my time, they would, but it just, they're not going to, they refuse to change anything in the lifestyle. But it just made them feel better for having the appointment, throwing down their credit card, you know, getting beat up for an hour and then leaving. And for them, that was success. And I just, you know, they went off and, you know, just still ran their lifestyle the way they would normally run it. And I think it's that part of just being able to, you know, for people to get enough leverage on themselves, or even just re-identify when somebody comes up and if I ask them and said, well, you know, I don't work with a lot of private clients anymore, but let me ask you, how many times have you been up to bat? How many times have you started this process? And, you know, they said, well, you know, probably, you know, 12, 15 times. And they said, well, then I can't design you an exercise program because other things going on here. We need to figure something else out first. We need to figure what's going on here because and I think it's an important question that the fitness industry really needs to ask because they're just selling memberships, selling personal training packages. But if you, aside from the medical history, it's the pathology of behavior we should be curious about as well, saying like, how long have you been struggling with this? How long have you tried? How many failed attempts? Then, you know, if at least we understand that the whole approach to this whole process of helping people regain their health, we realize that it's just it's a above the neck issue. And unfortunately, the fitness industry is not really well designed to handle it.
Right. That's right. Right. And, you know, that's why the fitness industry, just like other industries, is, you know, driven by the bottom line, driven by the dollar, right? So gyms and trainers typically, and you know, there's a lot of great trainers out there. They still need to earn a living, but at the same time, what you're talking about is just an absolutely brilliant and important question, which is how many times already have you tried to reach your goals with fitness and not made it? Because we're not going to do this again the same way is the right answer. And the formula for that may not be known. It may have to be customized, and it will have to be customized. But that question, who asks that question? I'd love to know how many people ask that question when someone comes to them for that body transformation, right? For summer vacation. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, and I think that's, and those are really, again, they're important pieces because it's, you know, because it's one of these things where if, when I work with people now, again, I work with people occasionally, and it's I'm in such a better position now because I say, listen, I really don't work with people probably anymore, but you've been hounding me. I tell you what, this is what it's going to cost, and I don't need your money. So either you do it exactly the way we're gonna have really frank conversations. You do exactly the way I want you to do it. Otherwise, don't bother coming back after this first appointment.
Nice.
And it actually feels really good because nothing worse than seeing the car hauled in the driveway and you're just dreading, your 4 o'clock appointment. You go, oh my God, she's here.
Yeah.
And it just, and I just, people suck the soul out of you because I think in this industry, for those of us that are in the helping industry, just trying to understand where the conversation is. One, we're not trying to save ourselves through our clients, right? So we're not trying to. It's not self-indulgent where I'm trying to make you better for my benefit, right? The fact that you're getting some assistance is secondary to the intention, which is I just want to feel good about what I'm doing in the world. But it's really being knowing that we have a practice skill set that's so specific. And that I want to be able to have some longevity in this career, and it's why part of the reason why I sold my practice, because it's just that simple conversation around fitness is just so diluted and just really not effective.
Yeah,
so
I'd love the people watching to ask themselves this question too. If they have goals for their physical fitness, how many times have they had the same goal over the last 5 years and not reached that goal? And to have a very honest conversation with themselves about what that might be about before they decide that's the goal again. Because go ahead and have the goal, but we've got to come up with another method to get there, right? And so, there are plenty of trainers, and there's certainly plenty of, therapists like myself. So there's people that you can talk to sort this through. This is the year. This is the year to grab hold of it the way that it's going to last. So if you want to do that, you reach out to David. You can reach out to me. You can email me, ask me some questions about, here's what I'm thinking. This is what I've tried, and I've spun those wheels so many times, and I want to move forward. Really, there might be something you just haven't thought of on your own, and then you can make a difference, make a change.
Yeah, well, I think that, and again, it's a perfect piece. It's just, I think one of the great things to be able to do, just as you mentioned before, is getting into the practice of the observation, right? When you talk about, and you talked about gratitude, but what was the word you used? The sentence that you used when you talked about gratitude. Saying writing it down it's still kind of a one-dimensional.
Right.
Yeah, writing down is kind of one-dimensional, but it's when people talk about having an attitude of gratitude, but it tends to be more lip service. But if we
exercising gratitude,
it's a physical act rather than just it's an observation. It's intrinsic. Like, there's so much stuff that we're our brain is wired into it. Our cells are feeling it. Our liver is responding to the ocean, right? Your adrenals are responding to it. The whole body gets to experience it all at the same time. But I think it's just in this conversation around fitness before what do you think that perhaps that before we start to try to fix what's wrong, it's really important to acknowledge what's really going right. And it's, if we start with the idea that my life is extraordinary in so many ways, and I want to ensure that I get to spend a lot of years here to continue to enjoy it, rather than, my health is so poor and my who I am is, I'm a physical mess, and my life is so horrible because of that. I think even it's the foundational premise in which why we want to get healthy. We get healthy because we're disgusted with ourselves, or we get healthy because we have an extraordinary life that we just want to keep living.
Right. I call that the push me, pull me. Do you ever watch Dr. Dolittle? Do you remember that?
Dr.
Dolittle. Anybody remember Dr. Dolittle? Okay, so in Dr. Dolittle, there was a push me, pull me. It was like a llama that had a head on both ends instead of an ass on one side and a head on the other, right? And so it didn't really know which way it was going. It was either being pulled or pushed. So I consider, that kind of mindset. I think we need to realize that we have a choice, that we can be a push me or a pull me. So we can either be pulled toward where we want to go, or we can try again to be pushed away from the crap that we focus on. So I'd rather look at, wow, that's my direction. I'm going to look over there. And do you ever ride a horse?
Yes.
Yeah. So when you're on a horse, right, if you've taken like any kind of lessons or whatever, you should know that you really don't have to move the reins very much. If you actually look toward where you want the horse to go, your body has just enough subtlety in its movement, in how you're looking toward where you want to go. The horse feels it and will go there. So, that's the idea, is that if you keep your eyes where you want to go and you move subtly through space to get there, it doesn't have to be drastic. It can be a slow process, but you just keep your body moving in that direction, you're going to get there. As opposed to if you're looking in the rear view mirror and trying to ride forward, what happens then?
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's just, part of the trick is actually just simplifying the process. What are, just a couple simple things. I just think we're just so confused. There's so much information out there, because we're from dietary strategies at the wazoo, from exercise strategies at the wazoo. There lacks a real foundational premise that's really beneath all of it. That people can actually start with, again, which is why when I was in Nicaragua watching these people, it was just such a fundamental belief system. It was so simple and so easy, and it really encompassed a huge part of their life. The way they thought about their life was based off a cultural, religious concept. And, and for us in North America, trying to find something that really is that simple, but that powerful. And we can really kind of move into that space on a daily basis, find a way to move into that space, whatever it looks like for you, but to keep it really simple. And I just need, if I'm in this space, we can assume that people have intelligence, they're just not accessing. They have abilities, they're just not accessing. We just need to get them into a different space to be, so they can actually function, rather than being stuck up in the chaos of what's going on inside their head.
Yeah.
So, the whole gratitude piece is perfect. And if that's the only thing we did without looking at anything else, the like, we can assume perhaps the likelihood is that people will start taking action on the other parts of their life when they're in a different space.
Yeah.
And they just need to get there. Just get there, and the rest will actually kind of start unfolding by itself, I would assume. Right.
So we're talking about our lenses of the world. We're talking about half glass full or half empty, right? And partially nutrition can help us to, enhance our brain chemistry so that we have a healthier perspective, a balanced perspective, a more optimistic perspective, for, if you want to call it that. And, when people wind up in the heavy carb, heavy sugar cycles of eating because they feel so crappy and they want the boost, they do get the boost, right? So, but then what happens in the brain is that they get the crash and they wind up in a darker place. So one of the ways that nutrition plays a role, and I'm only going to keep this simple for the sake of time because we don't have a lot of time left, but really, I'm not a nutritionist. Nutritional psychology is my thing. You're more of the nutrition, for mind, for a healthy body. But one of the quickest ways to stop having the cycles, the up and down roller coaster ride of emotions, is to stabilize your blood sugar and to not allow for the spikes that create the highs and then the lows. So it's not about not eating carbohydrates. That doesn't do you any good either in your brain. It's not about eliminating carbohydrates. It's not about, it's about choosing the ones that have the low glycemic index so that, you can have a longer lasting impact of the carbohydrate on the brain chemistry. So forget about fat loss and muscle building for a minute and just try to be freaking happy and eat potatoes. Eat a sweet potato and be happy.
Well, and I think it's, again, it's just we've, we've made it so complicated. And I think, and of course, and the last piece around it, that I see, I look at my own life and things that I try to model my own behavior, areas where, I struggle, I put it aside for a second and go, well, how do I do the things I do in the areas where I have some robust success. I'm really doing something well over there. And there's just a few simple things I do. Like I've read every day for 25 years, every single day.
What do you do?
So how do you know? I've read, I've sat down and I read.
Yeah.
Yeah, I sit down and read every day, probably every single day. I don't think I've missed a day for 25 years. And it's just like, there's no real secret to a lot of this stuff. It's just, you just got to pick a path. And then, but I keep it simple. And the simple part is that I'm just going to continue to move forward as best I can. But, but I have to pick a path.
Yeah.
And even when it comes to personal development, where people are into that place and they got all these books on the go. And so listen, be a Catholic or be a Jew, but you got to pick one, right? You have to find something that you identify with and that makes sense to you, that's in your wheelhouse, that's connected to who you are, your culture, your family, the social circle that you're in. You have to kind of look around and just take stock of where you are. What's the energy that you think you'd really like to be in most of the time? And when you start looking at the areas in your life where there is a huge amount of love and gratitude, and you see that, the bigger part of my life is actually amazing. And just moving into that place continuously, as soon as you step into that place, all of a sudden more possibilities open up. And it's really, for me, it's really taking that act of saying, I have to change my state. If I'm in a really bad state, mentally, what have you, emotionally, whatever's going on, I can observe it saying that's inconsistent with who I chose to be. So I'm not going to buy into it, but I need to deal with it. I need to sort it out. So I can look at my diet. I can look at my sleep patterns. I can look at stressful conversations I may have had. And I start looking for the things that actually caused it rather than just getting run over by it. And, but move myself into that state where, again, acknowledging just how extraordinary my life truly is on so many different levels. When I'm in that state being core centered, right? When I go there, actually, my lens is completely different. I start acknowledging, okay, I have massive control of what's going on. This is what I'm going to do about it. But I can't do it when I'm in the middle of the chaotic mindset.
Right. That's right. Yeah. And I think that, I'm sure we have to end like any second, but what I wish people would walk away from our conversation perhaps with is how much control we really do have over our brains, and that we can actually discover how to have that. Not everybody realizes that. But going back to the beginning of our chat, around, would you let your keyboard type for itself the email that you want to send out to someone that's important to you? No, you want to be in charge of that keyboard. So use your keyboard for your brain, type in what you want it to focus on, type in, how you want it to experience the world around you, be the masters of your mind, and watch what happens to your bodies. Watch what happens to how you stand, your posture. Watch, how you walk. It's really amazing to see what happens when we say, you know what, I might have these thoughts that worry me, but I'm not going to let those worrying thoughts be me. They're not going to become who I am. They're just going to be, oh yeah, there it is again. And that's because, this is a stressful situation. And so what? How many stressful situations have I gone through in 54 years? Quite a few, quite a few. You bring them on, it's okay, because there's so many great moments surrounding it, right? So many great people. What we have forgotten about is how to trust our gut as well around the toxicity that we allow in. So the minute something feels toxic or someone feels toxic, don't second guess yourself. If it feels toxic, it doesn't belong in your life. And, you have to either, figure out how to extricate yourself or remove the elements of toxicity. So you do it. You do it. Create your environment here in your head and create your environment outside of yourself. Right.
Yeah. It's well, and again, like I said, it comes down to some simple fundamental things. The people that are the best athletes in the world, people that make the most money in the world, people that have the most success in the world, do a few things exceptionally well over and over and over and over and over again. And I think that's the part that maybe the part that people really need to look at is that, you know, it just, you have, you know, you really have to become masters of simplicity, masters of some really basic things. It's an illusion that it has to be such a complicated thing. And it really doesn't. I mean, there's some complexity to the world, but the acts that we need to perform is really actually quite simple. And I think if we just embrace the simplicity, which actually I found was really hard for me, because it's because I enjoy pulling things apart, but I found there's certain parts of my life where I do that. I'm doing that as an excuse to saying, well, you know, it's complicated, right?
You think
look at all these
right out of something.
Parts.
You think you're right out of something.
Yeah.
Women are notorious. Sorry, I'm a woman. I can say this. Women are notorious for doing this in relationships. Right. With their significant others. Notorious. It's like, you know what? Stop overthinking. Just be in it. If it doesn't feel good, get out of it. If it does feel good, keep going. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just stop overthinking. Why did he say that? Why didn't he say that? Why? Right. All those things, right? Anyway,
so well, Ava, awesome. Thank you so much. I hope you're not getting too cold out there, but
actually, my hand's frozen right now, holding up this phone.
but yeah, I always appreciate you and the ability to chat with you. It's you know, it's just the conversations are fun. It's being able to, as I say, if you want to learn something, you should teach it, right? And having constant bigger conversations, you actually get to, you know, some little nuances of thought that you continue to improve upon or understand at a higher level. And of course, you catch me quite often saying, and what he's really trying to say is, so I appreciate that. It's just I need to hear that from time to time.
So funny, yeah. It's okay. That's what I'm here for, David.
All right.
I'm here to bring you down.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
All right.
Well, listen, have a great night. And and guys, if there's particular things that you're really interested in that you think Abe and I could have fun bouncing back and forth, just you know, message either of us or pop in the news feed here. We'd love to hear what you want to know, because you know, there's a lot of stuff that we're curious about for sure. But anything specifically that you just haven't been able to put together, it seems really complicated. Maybe it's just kind of on the tip of your tongue. Just drop us a line, and the next time we get on a Facebook Live here, we'll take the opportunity to address it the best we can.
Cool. Bye, David.
Hey, my friend. Have a great night.
Bye.
Bye.